happening. So, Charles, let's come back to you then. And, well, what's going on with the police?
Well, as ever, never quite the right thing. And we have our attention drawn to this by the tribunal that's been going on in Croydon last week, shown here by Sex Matters, who have described it as a tribunal concerning, well, particularly they're reporting on the anonymity of a witness. Now, that's not actually specifically what I want to go into, but this concerns Melanie Newman, a Metropolitan Police Service employee who submitted a statement of evidence that goes back to 2023. And I think this really just lays bare the intentional destruction of the public services, which I'll go on to qualify. Now, she was in 2023 signed up for what's called the Transgender Day of Visibility. And in her statement, she makes the following she describes what it is that she thought in the workplace, and she is very explicit in her beliefs. She says, "I have gender-critical beliefs, by which I mean that I know there are two sexes with immutable biological differences between them. I believe sex segregation and recording is essential in some circumstances to ensure female safety and equal opportunity, in much the same way that people are routinely segregated and classified by age." So it's important to note she's giving the policing context there. And she goes on to say, "I view this classification as particularly important in the criminal justice sphere. Males, irrespective of self-identification, make up the vast majority of violent and sexual crime suspects, defendants, and convicted offenders." She also went on to say that she believes very much in freedom of speech and expression, which presumably can't have endeared her to the Metropolitan Police Service or perhaps the tribunal itself. But the point really in all of this is that it teases out the fact that really what we're dealing with is an ideology and nothing to do with the way in which a police service should be able to conduct itself. And just to go on to give a flavour of what happened during this training, there were two trans activists there speaking. One, I might get the name wrong, it might be Shea Coffee, reposted a video on Twitter of Posey Parker being assaulted at a Let Women Speak event in New Zealand with a caption saying this was hilarious. And another one called Eva Echo, who spoke in hyperbolic terms about a need to save trans people from gender-critical people with, quote, warped, twisted views, end quote, but never identified the nature of the risk. He advised on how to dismiss concerns about trans women in female-only spaces and spoke about the government and media in a conspiratorial manner. Now, I think really one thing that's come out of the tribunal, we're yet to see the full transcript, so it's hard to know exactly which way it would have gone and what the significance is, but certainly a senior police officer there speaking at the tribunal wouldn't even commit to saying that there was an identifiable link between the male sex and violent crime. So that is the degree to which the police psyche and modus operandi has been infected by this kind of ideology. And I would say that this points back to the Equality Act 2010, which is now to be seen to be doing that which it was intended for, which is really to create division, confusion, the breakdown of the family unit, and particularly hypocrisy and contradiction in both law and the workplace. And I think really what this comes to is the use of the positive action as enabled by sections 158 and 159 of the Equality Act, which are contextualized by this phrase, which is participation in an activity by persons who share a protected characteristic that is disproportionately low. So although it's an absurd example, this means that you could manipulate the situation in order to justify, for example, putting more pregnant women into frontline soldiering, because of course they would be represented in a disproportionately low fashion. So once you've done that manipulation, it allows you to go over anything, regardless of whether it's appropriate or suitable or even desirable by the people who are looking for employment, into a position where, as an employer, you can treat a person more favourably in connection with recruitment or promotion than another person, because person A has the protected characteristic, but person B does not. And so with that in mind, we should look at this lady here, Emma Dunn, who is the chair of Agenda, which is spelled A colon and then gender, but of course it is an agenda. And in her profile there, it describes her as being the chair of Agenda, the cross-government network supporting trans and intersex staff across government. Emma is intersex and identifies as female. Her pronouns are she, her, or they, them. Most confusing, but the point is this organisation, Agenda, it sits within central government. And given what I've just said about the Equality Act and the clauses that enable positive action and the way in which the Metropolitan Police Service has treated its own employees with regard to indoctrination around, in this case, gender issues and indeed the protected characteristics part of it, it's very hard to see how the government itself is not weaponising the Equality Act in order to unlawfully positively discriminate in order to pursue this ideology. Now, obviously, if anything significant is to come out of the results of the tribunal, then I'll report back on that. But I think this gives a very good insight into the incredibly corrosive influences that are attacking police from all sides and in a completely intentional manner.